And I thought to myself before I saw your bit with Jesse, I said to myself, it's because they're getting passes, they're getting e-cards, they're being shown what's happening, and they're basically being said, hey, look, you play along with us, you play the game, and here's your card, and you show this at the 11th hour, and we got a spot for you in a nice underground city, where when it's all over, you come up and play God with us.
That's also why they don't care whether there's civil war or food riots or anything. They don't care.
No.
They'll just go underground and wait it out.
Wait it out?
I mean, it doesn't even have to be coronal mass ejections. It can just be anything.
Yeah. I saw Dennis Kucinich recently, and I've always been a pretty big fan of Dennis. And he admitted to me personally about the existence of chemtrails. I had him one-on-one one day, and he just said, yeah, they're real. People are getting sick. And then he came forward at a rally in Santa Cruz and went public with it. It was really the only kind of public statement he's ever made about it. And he was one of the last holdouts on the health care bill. And there he was, casting his vote yes. I said, I guess Dennis finally took the card, I mean, that was...
Yeah, it's a sad thing, and you're right. The chemtrails are immune suppressants. They're spraying in the air to slowly kill us. And the managers don't need us anymore. We were there to build the ships and to create so much chaos that no one could figure out what was really happening. But now that it's all over, we're really not needed any longer.
Well, that's why there's no new jobs. I mean, come on.
That's right.
Yeah.
You can guarantee it. I was making economic predictions based on the Aryan knowledge, and I made predictions on radio shows like this almost to the date when the economic collapse had happened, because I knew when they were leaving. The great way I knew they were leaving was because they were raiding the tunnel systems in Chile and Argentina. And so I knew that it was over. It was all over.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, let's see if we can get some other people in on this, Jay. I bet you some folks would like to ask you some questions. Are you up for that?
All right.
We got about 40 minutes left. So if you want to talk to Jay and ask him a question, and the powers that be will allow it, and the grace of God, we can get you in here. 347-308-8995, 347-308-8995, and you can go ahead and ask Jay a question. I wanted to ask you, while we're waiting for some people to have come in and call, what's your take on Nibiru? Is it real? Is it another fake, or is it part of the Anunnaki and the Aryan experience that you're talking about?
Well, it could be. I think so. What happened is that the Mahabharata was probably a war. Joseph Farrell goes into this in his books very well, especially the Giza Death Star series. And I think that the Earth, that there was a planet. Oh, you're not going to let me say it. Come on, you guys. That there was a planet called Tiamat, which existed right now with the asteroid belt.
Right.
And Tiamat had oceans, and it had a civilization from the race that had conquered the solar system earlier, before we came here from another solar system, according to these myths, from Sirius probably. And we landed here, and we colonized the Earth, and then we colonized Tiamat, or better yet, we may have just terraformed it. I don't know. But either way, a civilization rose up on Tiamat, and Mars was its moon. And Tom Van Flandern, the astrophysicist, goes into this in his books quite clearly. And a war started, and Tiamat blew up. Are you there?
I'm here. Yep.
Okay. They don't like this at all. And this is where comets came from. The oceans blew out into the solar system and froze into giant snowballs. And this is where the asteroid belt came from. And Mars got hit by one side of Mars has just been completely plastered. The side of the moon has been completely plastered. And Mars got thrown out into its own orbit and got a huge, meteor hitting it and destroyed. And the other, I don't know if you remember, about 2 weeks ago, there was a rain of fish in Australia. Charles Fort also covered a lot of these stories of rains of frogs.
Sure, frogs and stuff like that. Yeah,
but
yeah.
what that is that's from Tiamat, these snowballs, which are floating around in space since millions of years ago when Tiamat exploded, and the animals are still frozen inside the snowball. So snowball falls into the atmosphere, hits right above the ground in Australia, and anyone down below, a bunch of fish fall from the sky. And this happens quite frequently, actually. And that's what happened. And this is, Tom Van Flanderen really is clearly reveals the physics behind this. And so what I think is that the Nibiru myths from Sumeria are slightly mistranslated by Sitchin. French and the German scholars don't agree with Sitchin's translations completely, and he wouldn't be happy to hear me say that. And what I think is that there may have been a gigantic, huge chunk of rock which was thrown into an elliptical orbit, which does come by every once in a while and rips through and causes holy hell in the inner solar system. I can't buy the fact that planet could be occupied in any way. I think that Nibiru is a memory of Tiamat and mixed in with some of the debris that occurred after Tiamat blew up. And I think the Aryans were actually Tamatians who managed to, they were either on the moon, i.e. Mars, when it happened, or they managed to limp there, and then they managed to limp to Earth, where they soon took over because of their advanced technical abilities. I've done probably 200 or 300 interviews and never had so much interference on a phone line before.
Sure, if it's you or me or our combined, I don't know, whatever it is. But I got to tell you that I have funny stuff happen with my cell phone on a fairly frequent basis. So
Okay.
I'm not sure. It's your lucky night, I guess, to be talking to me.
I think so. But anyway, that's what I think Nibiru is. I think it's a memory remnant of the time before, and all this mixes in together with what the Puranas say and ancient Sumerian tablets and there's just some really strange stuff going on. Iapetus, I don't know if you're familiar with Hoagland's work on Iapetus, the moon of Saturn. No, it's artificial, and Hoagland's going to be coming out with something in about a week or two, which I think is the greatest piece of evidence he's ever come up with, which proves that one of the moons of Mars is completely and utterly artificial.
What about our moon? Is our moon artificial?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you remember the scene in AI where the little boy is walking in the woods running from the robot hunters, and he sees the moon rise over the trees, and it turns out to be a balloon filled with the robot hunters in them?
Right, yes.
Yeah, that was Kubrick telling you that the moon's a ship.
Interesting.
Yep. Very
interesting. What's fascinating is Jude Law plays in 3 separate films that have, actually 4 if you count The Amazing Mr. Ripley, which is all about deception. But he plays in 3 separate films that have some fairly interesting import. One, of course, is AI. The second is Sherlock Holmes, where he plays Dr. Watson, and Sherlock Holmes is a virtual Illuminati fest. But of course, at the end, they tell you it's all a sham. Don't believe it.
Right.
Yeah. It's just a sham. And the third is the Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus, and he plays in all 3 movies. And I find his name in terms of this art fascinating, which is Jude Law or Judaic Law.
Yes.
Right. I mean, we just live in a strange universe sometimes, Jay. While you and I talk about, what's happening with, the Aryans or coronal mass, there's also this other world that Terence McKenna talks about in Strange Attraction, and the eschaton at the end of time, and synchronicity, and and who we are as multidimensional beings, and that's my belief. And,
well, yeah, that's what you're not allowed to know. Our opening myth of our culture is Adam and Eve, and they're outlawed from eating the fruit of the tree of knowledge. And so, Eve does go, and the Kundalini snake tells her that God's lying to her. She won't die if she eats the fruit of the tree of knowledge. And she, listens to the Kundalini snake up the trunk of the tree, and she eats the apple, and the apple is a perfect representation of the hyperdimensional torus. And in that moment, she has a glimpse into the pentagonal structure of the seeds, and within the hyperdimensional torus of the shell of the apple. And in that moment, she has gone from an animalhood to godhood, because that's what separates the two, is the knowledge of multidimensional states and how dimensions interact with each other. And so they are kicked out of the Garden of Eden, which is, by the way, Iraq, and where the Aryans lived. So Adam and Eve is a story of two earth people who discovered the science of the Aryans, which is a multidimensional science. And I really mean that. I mean, they are able to do things that are quite incredible. And we can do those too. They're no different than us.
Right.
They've just made us believe that they're somehow superior, but they're not. We possess everything they possess. We are extremely advanced beings, just like Terence always said. We are the game.
Yeah.
The game isn't evolution. The game isn't the solar system. The game is us. We're the game. And until we realize that, we're in deep, deep trouble.
Yeah. I did a post on my site a few weeks back, and it's called "You Are the Most Dangerous Species in the Universe," and it really speaks to, I mean, one of the things that I feel is that we have always been taken out of ourselves, whether it's been some demigod or some deity or some ascended master or some extraterrestrial or some senator, or king. We've always been taken out of our own internal sphere of influence and sovereignty, and it's always been something better, sexier, more powerful, when really it's really a sham. I mean, if we were just to really cut through that and get in touch with this juicy experience of being a human being, I mean, I think it could be quite profound. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that's the whole thing. This is why people are suffering from avatar depression syndrome. People come up to me and they tell me, I saw Avatar and I got depressed, and I say, well, why? And they say, well, I want to live in that world. I said, look, go live in it. I mean, it's right there. It's not like you have to go to a movie or go to another planet. It's right there, in the woods and in the mountains and in the trees and in the shamanic substances and all of that. So
mostly in our own intention too, isn't it? I mean,
yeah, and we can be whatever we want to be. They don't want us to know who we are, okay? And right now they're sowing chaos, so much chaos, to keep us confused so that we will not ever know who we really are, which is equal with them, which is multidimensional creatures which are hooked into a gigantic matrix of life. And we just have to come to grips with that fact, and that, all of the hunter-gatherers were extremely advanced. This is an idea that Terence absolutely endorsed, and so do I.